Welcome. I'm Robert, and this is a quick review of Degenerates Hand of Doom. So, just to give you some background when it comes to adventuring RPGs, my previous experience playing these types of games solitaire, I have played Gloom of Kilforth and uh, explored the Forest of Adramon. All right. I have also Runebound Second Edition and Third Edition in my shelf. I haven't gotten around to play it, but I saw this game on sale recently, and this past July. And I had initially dismissed it when people shared it on solo board gaming circles when they shared their play session pics because I thought the art was kind of crude and this is so unlike any other board game I've seen when it comes to the color scheme that I immediately rejected it. But that wasn't. I didn't really even give it a chance. I'm not even gonna like look into this game. But it went on sale, and I have been pleasantly surprised when I've tried some board games that I initially dismissed. So I started actually doing a bit of homework on this game, and I went ahead and tried it out. All right. So I wanna share with you what I think. All right. So what I ended up doing once I went through the rules, I started a campaign, and the first couple of starts were unsuccessful because I died on the first mission while I was getting a grasp of the rules. On my third attempt, I did manage to play three campaign missions in a row. The third mission, my characters perished, and I was only a couple of turns away from winning, but um, I got um, I got completely destroyed by a perfect storm of just well, dice rolls that resulted in my two characters facing like eight enemies. Literally, I have a picture of that. You'll see it in a second. But yeah, so I played this two-handed. You can play it solo, but for this type of games, I typically prefer controlling two or even three characters because I like finding interactions between characters and synergies, and I like assigning roles. But you are allowed to play this with just controlling one character. You can perfectly do that, just so you know, right? For people that prefer that. So, what do I think about the game? Let's start with the art, all right? So, the art is subjective. For me, it is a positive. And again, I initially dismissed it just because it's so different from everything I own. But that's kind of its strength at the same time. The art grew on me the more I started reading about the game. Once I got it on my hands and opened it, I absolutely love the art now. This is not my type of art. How this this style. I grew up watching cartoons and anime, so I like my clean art typically. But this really just grew on me, and I just adore it now. Even if I don't really plan to play it as often, just because of how many games I own. This just as an art, just for to me, this is just a work of art. The way that this looks, and that's just a reason for me to keep it. Honestly, I know that that's going to be subjective, but I have even heard of some people that even though they dislike the art, they like the game so much that they enjoy it, that they keep it and they keep it in their collection. So even if you don't love the art, just read a bit, read what I have to say about the game, the mechanics that it has, and do your own homework after, and see. You might like what you hear. So don't dismiss it like I did because of the art initially. All right. Now, so one thing the game does great. All right. Now another thing the game is great at is the campaign aspect. So most campaign games nowadays they require a huge commitment typically, and it might be the length might be pretty. It can be intimidating how long some campaign games can be and the amount of commitment they ask of you. But here, once you grasp the rules, you can on a weekend if you're not planning to if you don't have any other plans, you could finish a campaign of this game on a weekend or even one day on one sit down. Once you grasp the rules, that is in one long sitting. Um, because what happens is there's a campaign book that comes with the game, okay, missions, right? So there's a starting mission, and then depending on the circumstances, how you approach that mission, what you see here is the setup for the first mission. You have to go pick clues, right? So depending on which clue you pick, the book will tell you which mission, which campaign path you're taking. And even then, there's more branching paths after that, depending on certain circumstances, all right? So the campaign path I ended up with only had me on this side of the map. I never really stepped on over to this half of the map. And as I mentioned earlier, I was really close to winning on that last mission. So basically, I ended up in a mission where I was spreading a disease throughout the land. I pledged my allegiance to a god of disease. So my party and I, on that last mission, needed to spread the disease throughout various towns. And I was only one town away from finishing, and I would have won. But literally one stop before that town, my party just got annihilated because of a perfect storm of dice rolls and card draws that we ended up my two characters facing literally a table of 8 enemies. And we killed like 6 of them, but it was just too much and we both perished. Um, so that's what happened in my campaign. And as I mentioned as well, 2 unsuccessful attempts initially with the first mission, just trying to grasp the rules. Now let's talk about the rules. So there definitely is a lot going on in this game. I tried recording earlier like a round example of what can happen in a round. I intended for that to be 5 minutes. It actually took like 15 minutes for me to just talk about what happens in a round, because a lot of things can happen, all right? I wasn't even trying to make like a detailed tutorial. I was just trying to explain, okay, so you do this and then this, and it was actually way longer than I expected. So a lot of things happen. But however, once you read the rules once, it just all clicks in, all right? It just kind of clicks and you can just start playing the basic round. The very basic way that I can describe of what happens in a round is you choose a stance if you want to be bold or cautious as a party. Then you choose if you want to rest or move, all right? And then you draw an encounter card. And based on that danger card. And then based on the danger card you draw, you might or might not end up facing monsters and circumstances from the encounter deck, okay? And encounter deck will tell you, you find a fountain or you find a merchant on the road and you can ignore them or kill them or steal from them. So that's where the stories will happen, all right? And that's that's what happens in a round. And you're gonna move around the land. You'll have an objective, typically like arrive here and rest to check a clue, and so on. So that's what a great strength is, the short length of the campaign. You can get a short campaign here, and it'll have that campaign feel, but it's much more compartmentalized, right? Now, another great strength of the game is the storytelling aspect. So the game has tons of story cards, all right? So you have lots of different possibilities of things that'll happen throughout the game. Okay, and there's expansions to increase these decks for monsters and encounters for your game, right? If you want even more variety. So that's one strength. The emerging storytelling aspect, everything is super detailed. There's tons of detail about the lore. The book is full of lore, right? The rule book, the mission book. There's lots of text and paragraph explaining the lore of that has been created for this game. So lots of love. You can see how detail have been put on that. I don't care as much about story when I play board games. I'm more of like just a gameplay guy. I just like seeing my characters develop, and just the gameplay is what I care about mostly. But if you enjoy this narrative aspect, you're gonna have a field day with this. All right. So another positive I have to mention, okay, is how much content there is in the base game. So some base games or other games sometimes can be a bit lacking with the content, but here this will keep you busy for a while. I had a couple of campaign attempts. Even though I was just grasping the rules, it was very fun. Just exploring the land and fighting monsters. Even though I failed those first couple of attempts, and then when I succeeded in that third attempt, I started progressing to the missions, and you end up going places, and your character develops, and crazy things happen. And that was only one of the mission paths. I mean, there's tons of other mission paths in the mission book, and that was just only two of the characters. There's tons of characters included in the core set, all right? So what I'm saying is, as far as core sets go, this is one of the best I've ever seen from the solitaire board games that I've bought, all right? This is really full of content, all right? So this will keep you busy for quite a while with the mission book, with the different character combinations, with the different possibilities depending on the circumstances where the missions will take you, the amount of loot, just so many freaking possibilities, all right, with the amount of content in this game. So just A+ on the value that you get, all right. Now, I do have some notes here, and I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything. All right. So I mentioned the world building, the quick campaign, the art, all right, the core set. Okay. So player count, all right. So you can play this perfectly fine solitaire. I think I might have mentioned that already with just one character. I like playing with two because I like finding interactions. So you can play at one or controlling two. It's gonna be perfectly fine. Okay, so I think now I want to talk about the rulebook as well, all right? And then I'll get into a couple of negatives. But the rulebook. So I think the rulebook, even though there's a lot going on in this game, the basic gameplay loop is pretty simple, all right? But you have to learn. You just have to look out for the iconography. If you pay attention to the iconography and look at the amazing player aids reference that the game comes with. You'll be able to pick up the game, and once you've read it, you can just pick up these, and you'll get going, and you'll get playing real fast, right? So these player aids are amazing, right? Very, very well done. The rule book, again, even though there's tons going on, once you read it once and write a couple of notes to and any kind of rules you think you might forget, just write them down. That's typically what I do. But I was able to get going after one read. And after the couple plays, I saw some mistakes that I made, but by my third play, I got the rules pretty well. So the rulebook is really well done. The rulebook also has an amazing index. All right, so if you go to the back of the book, there is an index, all right, alphabetic, and there wasn't a single instance where I wasn't able to find anything that I had any doubts about. So I would check this, and it will tell me exactly in which pages that mechanic or word was mentioned, and I was there in seconds. So for a game that has so many things going on, the rulebook is just stellar, all right? So just really, really well done, like exemplary rulebook, all right? Okay. And now I also want to mention combat. One thing that is very unique about this game is combat. I have not ever played a game that has combat like this. And it's really interesting. I'll tell you why. Because when rolling in this game, you want to get low results. So when you do tests for combat or for attributes, you want to roll low. And if you roll equal or lower than the attribute requirement, that's when you pass the tests. But for combat, not only do you want to roll low, you also want to make sure that when you roll, like I did here, you get one. I got a 1 and a 6. So you want to roll one low number and one high number, but still pass your test, all right? Because you'll use the high number to deal that amount of damage, but you also want a low number so that you can pass your test for, let's say if you're attacking using agility. So the witch smeller has agility, right? And of 8. So I need to roll 8 or less to pass an attack with agility. So I roll a 7, perfect. So this is the perfect roll here. I would deal 6 damage, which is the maximum. So you deal damage equal to the highest of the two. But you have to make sure that you pass the test with those two dice, all right? So very interesting combat in which you want to roll low, but you want one of those numbers to be high still. All right. Um, so I really I haven't played a game that does that with dice, so I found that really interesting. I also want to mention luck. So it's one of the resources in the game, and it's very precious. All right. So you'll need luck. You'll need luck to you can use it to either reroll dice or to stop the hand of doom from causing trouble throughout the land. And when you play a campaign, you typically want to save your luck instead of rolling dice. You want to use your luck to stop the hand of doom from appearing in the land. All right. Now, how does the hand of doom appear? It appears by these numbers going up. And this is another interesting mechanic in the game that really makes it feel like the board develops as you play the campaign. There's a pandemic type mechanic where the danger of the land increases. So the lower the number, the better for the players. But as those numbers increase, the more chances that you find monsters and they'll attack you when you are in those areas. Okay. As you draw more danger cards by turns passing, those numbers across the board will, it'll tell you which of the numbers increase. And again, the higher that number, the worse for you. More chances of monsters attacking you. So it's a pandemic type mechanic. There are ways to mitigate that. You can invest gold to reduce the danger of areas. But as you play the campaign, the world will become more dangerous, is what that amounts to. And it just makes it look like the world is developing, not just your characters, all right? So very, very interesting aspect of having a pandemic style mechanic on the board. Not something that I don't believe I've seen in from the um, adventure RPGs that I've played myself, the way that this one does it anyway, because it's a campaign game. So the danger level carries between missions. Okay, so now I want to get on a couple of negatives, all right? So one thing is the components. So the components, they warped, unfortunately. That's one of my complaints. The cards, some of them warped when I took them out of the package. I sleeve them, so it's all right. It doesn't really affect me because I sleeve them with soft sleeves, so it wasn't an issue in my case. But they warped sadly the character boards too. So I ended up using a Ultra Pro top loader, a big one, and cutting it so that I could fit a character card there. If you want to find out all the materials that I use for my setup, like sleeve wise and trays, I made a video about that. You will see it. I'll share it in the comments. Now, so components quality. That's I can't really give it a positive because these work, the cards worked. So I can't give it. They look beautiful, but the quality is lacking. Okay. Now another thing is, I found the whole aspect of using these tracking boards for keeping track of gold, wounds, health. I found that incredibly fiddly because the game asks you, the way that it's made, it asks you to have 5 different little tokens here to track gold, experience, and luck, and wounds, and constitution. So just moving 5 different tokens here to keep track of all of that, and you can very easily just tip over one of them, and you could just make a mistake, and now you don't know how much luck you had. I just found that incredibly fiddly. I ended up just using dice to keep track of gold, experience, and luck instead of the little tokens. So I'm using these dice, all right, for those 3 things. For health, I did end up leaving it on the board because I can manage 2. 2 is fine, 2 of these, but 5 tokens just kind of cramped in that tracking board, just incredibly fiddly. I did not like that. But so those are a couple negatives I wanted to mention. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything else. There is a criticism that some people have brought up before I bought the game, that there's not a lot of loot that straight up increases your character's attribute. I did not find that an issue, because the loot in this game is pretty interesting, and it does have, even if you think the loot might not be useful, loot that gives you statuses is useful. All right, I found it useful when I least thought it would be. Like, I didn't think it would be, but it ended up being useful. Getting a status from loot, right? Um, but not an issue for me. And the the loot by the end of the campaign, I love how my characters developed. I only had a couple cards that provided extra attributes, but my characters still had tons of abilities, and combat was an interesting puzzle for me. Obviously, very log based because of their dice rolls, but there's some things that you can do with luck. As a last resort, as I said, you should save it for the Hand of Doom appearing, and keeping the pandemic mechanics in check. That's what you should use the luck for in a campaign, all right? But as a last resort, if you're about to die and there's nothing else you can do, that's when you use your luck to try to save a roll in combat and do a reroll, all right? But I did not, that was an issue for me. Maybe it'll be for you. Like, you want to see a character get +3 strength and whatnot. So maybe it'll be an issue for you. I didn't find it an issue. The loot is very funny. Like, there's like in jokes, and very, there's loot and enemies that are very fitting to this world that has been created for this. All right. So that is it. So those are my thoughts. So just to kind of summarize, if you want a game that provides a short campaign, this a RPG game that provides a short campaign where you want to see your characters develop. This is one of the better ones that I've seen. That if you want a campaign, like if you want one-off sessions, you actually can. But I think that this works better as those string of missions, short campaign game, right? Although you can play the missions individually if you prefer. So I'd say positive. If you enjoy the art, if you like the art, it'll make it even more enjoyable. If you want a really detailed game with tons of lore and tons of detail on text, flavor text, and very interesting enemies, if you want a game, a RPG game that isn't your typical D&D tropes and the browns and greens and from all of your board games, if you want a game that'll stand out like hell in your board game collection, there's no game in my collection like this. Like, I can tell you just from a couple aspects, from the theme, the colors, the combat mechanics. This game is so unique. I just love. I love having it in my collection. My real complaint, only honestly, is just the fiddliness of the board and not the component quality is not horrible or anything, but I wish the cards hadn't worked. That's really it. The core game, also another positive, just summarizing things, it's just, you have a ton of content here. This will keep you busy for a while, all right? You have tons of characters to play with, combinations. You can play solo, you can control 2 characters, you can also, there's different mission paths, so there's also expansion content as well. There's, if you want more of everything, there's that. But this will keep me busy for a while. So also, if you want to see a persistent world that evolves with the areas becoming more dangerous and based on different mission circumstances, even some areas being destroyed, disappearing from the map, so it feels like a breathing world as you explore it and as things change. All right. So those are my main positives and why I'm keeping the game. I also really love the art. I think I need to emphasize this, but it's not for everyone, as I said. But don't dismiss it because of the art, like I did initially. Okay, there's a lot to like here. All right. So I hope that if you have been looking at buying this game, I hope that what I've shared today gives you a bit of an idea. All right. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to share them in the comment section here on the video, all right? And thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one.